He was known in the town simply as Mr. Elias, an old man who walked slowly with a wooden cane and carried silence like a second coat, the kind of man people greeted politely but never truly saw. His life had stretched long behind him, filled with years of labor, a marriage that ended too soon, and a house that echoed with memories louder than sound. Each morning he followed the same routine, rising before the sun, brewing weak coffee, and sitting by the window as the world hurried past him, younger and louder than he felt inside. Time had taught him patience, but it had also carved loneliness deep into his bones, and though he rarely admitted it even to himself, he had begun to believe that whatever warmth life once held for him was gone forever. She arrived in town on a rainy afternoon, stepping off the bus with a suitcase that carried more hope than belongings. Her name was Lena, a young woman barely into adulthood, her eyes curious yet guarded, shaped by disappointments she was too young to have endured so many of. She had come searching for something she couldn't name, escaping a life that felt too small and expectations that pressed too tightly against her chest. The town was not what she had imagined for her future, but it offered quiet, and quiet felt like a place to breathe. She found work at a small bookstore near the square, a fading place with dusty shelves and slow afternoons, and it was there that her life first brushed against Elias's. He visited the bookstore every Thursday, more out of habit than desire, running his fingers across old spines as if touching familiar friends. On one such afternoon, Lena noticed him struggling to reach a book from a high shelf and stepped forward without thinking, handing it to him with a gentle smile. Their conversation was brief and unremarkable, yet when Elias left that day, he carried with him a strange feeling, like a door had quietly opened somewhere inside his chest. Lena, too, watched him go with an unexpected sense of comfort, as if she had spoken to someone who truly heard her even though she had said almost nothing at all. Their meetings became frequent, then intentional. Elias would linger longer in the bookstore, and Lena would delay closing just to finish their conversations. He spoke of places he had traveled long ago, of love lost and lessons learned too late, and she listened with an attention that surprised him. In return, she shared her dreams, her fears of becoming invisible in a world that demanded constant motion, and the exhaustion of trying to be everything everyone else wanted. There was no urgency between them, no need to impress, only a steady unfolding of trust. Elias found himself laughing more, sleeping better, while Lena discovered a calm she had never known, a sense of being valued not for her youth or beauty but for her thoughts and heart. As weeks turned into months, their bond deepened into something neither had planned nor dared to name. They walked together through the park at dusk, sharing silence as comfortably as words, and sometimes Elias would stop to rest, embarrassed by his frailty, only for Lena to sit beside him without impatience or pity. She saw him not as an old man nearing the end, but as a whole person, rich with stories and gentleness, while he saw in her not a fleeting youth, but a soul searching for meaning. Yet with every shared moment came a growing awareness of the world beyond their quiet connection, a world that would not understand. The first signs of judgment appeared subtly, in lingering looks and whispered conversations when they were seen together. Lena's coworkers asked questions masked as concern, and Elias noticed neighbors watching from behind curtains. Doubt crept in where certainty had lived, and both began to wrestle with their own fears. Elias worried that loving her was selfish, that he was anchoring her to a life she would one day regret choosing. Lena, though fiercely drawn to him, feared becoming defined by a relationship the world deemed wrong, feared losing the future she had yet to build. These unspoken conflicts grew heavier, casting shadows over moments that once felt effortless. The breaking point came one evening when Lena arrived at Elias's house in tears, her family having learned of the relationship and demanded she leave town immediately. Anger, fear, and shame tangled inside her, and Elias listened quietly as he always did, though his heart felt as though it were splitting open. When she asked him what to do, he hesitated, the weight of love and responsibility pressing against his chest. For the first time, he did not offer wisdom, only honesty, telling her that loving him should never cost her the life she deserved. His words, meant to protect her, felt like rejection, and Lena left that night believing love was once again something she could not keep. Days passed in silence, heavy and aching. Elias returned to his old routines, but they no longer comforted him, and Lena packed her suitcase, preparing to leave town with a heart full of unfinished sentences. On her last morning, she returned to the bookstore one final time, hoping for closure she wasn't sure existed. There, she found a letter Elias had left with the owner, written in trembling handwriting, confessing that meeting her had reminded him life could still surprise him, that loving her had been the greatest gift of his remaining years, and that letting her go was the hardest thing he had ever done. He did not ask her to stay, only to live fully and bravely, carrying the knowledge that she had been deeply, sincerely loved. Lena found Elias sitting by his window that afternoon, watching the same street he had watched for decades. She stood before him, tears in her eyes, and told him that love was not something to be sacrificed for comfort or fear, that what they shared had already changed her, and that no future felt meaningful if it required erasing that truth. They did not promise forever, nor did they pretend the world would suddenly accept them, but they chose honesty over fear, connection over expectation. Whether their time together would be long or short no longer mattered. What mattered was that they had met, truly seen one another, and loved without regret. In the years that followed, the town continued to whisper, and time continued its quiet march forward, but Elias lived with a lightness he had thought impossible, and Lena grew into herself with a strength rooted in love rather than approval. Their story was not perfect, nor was it easy, but it was real, and in that reality lived its beauty. It was a reminder that love does not ask permission from age or society, that sometimes the most meaningful connections arrive later unexpectedly, and that when two souls meet in truth, even time itself must pause to listen.